Tell everybody a little bit about PricewaterhouseCoopers and also the India Foundation of it and how have we come together, especially you were talking about 2015, right? How did we come together and what are the things that you're working here when it comes to PwC?
Yeah, so I mean, PwC, I mean, I drive, I'm on the non-commercial side, so I do three things essentially in PwC. I lead the PwC India Foundation. Most of its programs are in India, outside of the Nepal intervention, because Indian foundations can only work within the Indian national boundaries. But in the case of Nepal, the Indian government allowed a special dispensation for Indian foundations because of the special relationship, allowed Indian foundations to work in Nepal. So at that time, the PwC India Foundation, being an Indian legal entity, could work in Nepal. Otherwise, typically, you're not allowed to do so. And so that in those early days when we came, it was all about coming and understanding the context, understanding who are the people who are willing to invest alongside you. And you mentioned Nirvan earlier. I mean, the CG Group partnered with us at that time. We built homes. I did work with Beer Hospital. We did water and sanitation programs because the monsoon was about to be upon us. Road infrastructure was going to be affected, so there was a timing equation associated with it.
Everything had to be fast.
Everything had to be fast. Yeah, exactly. So I think I think we did some very substantive work where it wasn't just about us coming in, sort of using global benchmarks to be able to do the right thing. It was also about learning. I mean, the amount of things that I learned here, the power of a private sector distribution network, right, of the kind that CG had because of its FMCG business. It's one of the cases that I make globally, that you had a large private enterprise who was willing to come to the table and say, okay, teach us. Otherwise sometimes, as we were discussing earlier, the propensity for change is very limited within systems. But, I mean, kudos to Mr. Chaudhary, Senior, who essentially said, my system is available, tell us what we need to do, how we need to do it, and we will bring that to the table. And that in itself was amazing. So for us, I mean, we started with that, but then, moving on from there, we've continued to do lots of work in Nepal, but also beyond. One of the things that I do for PwC globally is that I drive humanitarian programs in protracted crisis. So, not the typical places that you might expect PwC to be operating in, and commercially we don't. So everywhere from Afghanistan to Syria to Turkey,
Bangladesh, for instance.
Bangladesh, we have one of the oldest programs in the largest refugee camp in the world in Cox's Bazar. Almost 250,000 footfalls in our 2 little healthcare camps that we run there. So it's part of PwC's intent to do that was taking on the fact that the private sector has a far bigger responsibility than we have assumed, perhaps historically. And for me, that's been a really big revelation in some senses, because private companies were not typically used to doing stuff like this. But think about it this way. PwC is, over 350,000 people in sort of 170 countries across the world. Think about any type of skill set, width and depth is available within that system, right? So you've got some of the smartest people on the planet, but their day-to-day is servicing a particular type of idea, which is usually sort of commercially associated. And for me, the real opportunity was, imagine if you were able to take that type of ecosystem and target some of its concentration and focus towards societal well-being. My God, the kind of change that you could possibly have, right? And so I've had the great pleasure of having very good leaders globally, as well as in India, who got that, right? Sometimes we think, doing good for society should come very naturally to everyone. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Right? And it surprises me all the time that, people who have so much but do so little. But what I'm beginning to see, the culture of philanthropy, it's ingrained, as I think about cultures in our part of the world, it's ingrained in our ecosystem in some way or form.
Of giving back.
Of giving back. No, giving to neighbor, giving to, the extension of your village, giving to the temple, right? So we do giving, but it was just not structured in that way that societal giving has been defined in the Western context, right? So we have this great culture, but how do you make that more efficient? How do you make it more outcome-oriented? These are some of the things that we've tried to work on, especially as I think about PwC, because, Even in India, 90% of our not-for-profit ecosystem is small and medium-sized institutions. And if you think about a world which is constrained on resources, constrained on finances, the model for development and humanitarian action in the future is going to be local capacity and capability. I don't want to be coming here 10 years later and sharing more knowledge. What I want to be doing is enabling and empowering local Nepali people who know their country much better than anybody else in the world will ever know it, right? Who are more interested and vested in the benefit and the growth of their country than anybody else will ever be. How do I empower and enable them more to take decisions on their own? And that's really speaking with a little bit of money and a lot of skill set exchange, right? So for us, I think in so many ways, it's about enabling and empowering local institutions so that they have the power of the right type of skills and sufficient levels of financing as they look for their own solutions for the future versus the historical parachute development of model. Somebody came from far away.
A colonial mindset.
Yeah,
let me just use this word.
Yeah, you said it. Takes 6 months to learn even, how to take the left turn outside of your office. That's just not efficient. Right, and it's not the format that's going to work in the world which is constrained in the way that it is with resources, with a growing population, and such like.
Thank you very much for watching us on YouTube. Make sure that you also listen to us on Spotify.